The combat deck of Outpost. Nexus 12 hummed with the familiar sounds of training, the whir of holographic target projectors, the thud of bodies hitting shock-absorbent mats, and the occasional cry of pain or triumph. The vast chamber stretched across an entire level of the space station, its high ceiling dotted with observation drones recording every movement for later analysis. Massive viewports lined one wall, offering a breathtaking panorama of the gas giant Vexus and its 16 moons, a constant reminder of how far humanity had ventured from Earth. Leo Trent stood at the edge of a training circle, his chest heaving as he caught his breath. At 15, he was among the youngest cadets at the Interplanetary Combat Academy, and certainly the smallest in his cohort. Sweat plastered his sandy hair to his forehead, and his standard-issue gray training uniform hung loose on his narrow shoulders despite being the smallest size available. "Hydration break," bellowed the automated announcement system. 5 minutes. The cadets dispersed toward the water stations positioned around the deck's perimeter. Leo wiped his face with a towel and joined a small cluster of fellow trainees. Unlike him, most were already showing the physical benefits of the rigorous training regimen. Some weren't even human. The Academy accepted qualified applicants from all Federation species, creating a diverse melting pot of combat styles and physiologies. Zara, a tall cadet with forearms and iridescent skin from Proxima Centauri's second colony, nodded at Leo. "Nice recovery on that last sequence. Thought Instructor Thrax had you cornered." Leo managed a smile, grateful for the rare acknowledgement. "Thanks. My grandfather taught me that sidestep maneuver." "Your grandfather?" asked Kel, a bulky human from the Mars colonies. "The station mechanic." His tone carried the faintest hint of mockery. Leo straightened his posture, feeling a surge of pride despite his aching muscles. Before he was a mechanic, he was one of the best. He actually trained the Emperor's Royal Guard for 15 years. The small circle fell silent. Then Kel snorted. "Sure he did." "It's true," Leo insisted, his voice rising slightly. "He has a royal medallion and everything. He doesn't talk about it much, but quite the imagination you have there." Cadet Trent. The deep, rumbling voice came from behind Leo. He turned to find Instructor Thrax looming over him. The alien combat trainer stood over 7 feet tall, his leathery green skin mottled with battle scars, eyes like polished obsidian. His massive arms were folded across his chest, showcasing the bulging muscles that had made him legendary in 3 sectors. Leo swallowed hard. "Sir, I wasn't imagining—" "Malcolm Trent," Thrax interrupted, "is a station mechanic who fixes our waste recyclers when they malfunction. Now you're claiming he trained the most elite fighting force in the galaxy." His lipless mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "Perhaps you should focus less on fabricating family legends and more on your abysmal combat scores." The other cadets had gone deadly quiet. Even the ambient noise of the training deck seemed to diminish. "My grandfather did train them," Leo said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He doesn't brag about it, but—" The slap came without warning. Thrax's enormous hand connected with Leo's cheek with a crack that echoed across the deck. The force sent the boy staggering backward, and he would have fallen if Zara hadn't steadied him with 2 of her arms. "Insubordination and lying to a superior officer," Thrax said calmly, as if he were commenting on the weather. "That's 2 demerits. Cadet Trent, now, everyone back to your stations. Break is over." Leo stood frozen, his cheek burning, eyes wide with shock and humiliation. Around him, cadets averted their gazes and quickly dispersed. Nobody spoke. Nobody challenged the instructor. In the rigid hierarchy of the Academy, Thrax's authority was absolute. With trembling legs, Leo made his way back to his training station. The taste of blood filled his mouth where his teeth had cut the inside of his cheek. But it wasn't the physical pain that threatened to overwhelm him. It was the public humiliation, the casual dismissal of his family's legacy. and the helplessness he felt in the face of Thrax's power. For the remainder of the training session, Leo moved through the combat sequences mechanically. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the incident over and over. He thought of his grandfather's weathered hands showing him combat stances when they thought no one was watching. He remembered the medallion his grandfather kept locked away, bringing it out only on rare occasions to tell Leo stories of a past that seemed increasingly distant and unbelievable. Had it all been lies? No, Leo refused to believe that. His grandfather wasn't a liar. But doubt crept in nonetheless, poisoning his certainty with each passing minute. When the training finally ended, Leo avoided eye contact with everyone as he hurried toward the exit. Normally, cadets would shower and change in the communal facilities, but Leo couldn't bear the thought of facing his peers. Not today. He'd used the small shower in the quarters he shared with his grandfather. As he reached the massive sliding doors, he heard Thrax's voice once more. Remember, cadets, truth and discipline are the foundation of combat excellence. Those who cannot master both have no place among the stars. The message wasn't subtle. Leo kept his head down and slipped through the doors into the corridor beyond. The humming of the station's life support systems provided a soothing background noise as Leo made his way through the labyrinthine passages of Nexus 12. The space station was home to over 15,000 people, a floating city that served as a trading hub, military outpost, and refueling station for vessels traversing this sector of space. Its architecture was utilitarian, all function and no form, with color-coded corridors and numerical designations to help residents navigate its 20 levels. Leo took the service elevator down to maintenance level 3, where the station's technicians and mechanics had their quarters. The corridors here were narrower, the lighting dimmer to conserve energy. Pipes and conduits ran exposed along the ceiling, occasionally dripping condensation onto the metal floor grating. Their quarters were modest, a 2-room living space that smelled perpetually of machine oil and the hydroponic herbs his grandfather grew in small containers by the viewport. Leo pressed his palm against the door scanner and stepped inside once the lock disengaged. "Grandfather," he called out, but the quarters were empty. Leo headed straight for the tiny bathroom cubicle. He stripped off his training uniform and stepped under the weak spray of the shower, letting the lukewarm water wash away the sweat and, he wished, the humiliation of the day. The water conservation timer beeped after 3 minutes, and he stepped out, drying himself with a threadbare towel. In the small mirror, he examined his face. A red mark was clearly visible where Thrax had struck him, already darkening into what would be a bruise by morning. Leo touched it gingerly, wincing at the tenderness. How would he explain this to his grandfather? After dressing in civilian clothes, a simple jumpsuit with the station's insignia on the breast pocket, Leo sat at their small dining table and waited. His grandfather's shift in the station's main engine room would end soon. He didn't have to wait long. The door slid open with a hiss, and Malcolm "Mal" Trent stepped inside. At 68, Mal was still remarkably fit, with broad shoulders and strong hands shaped by decades of mechanical work. His hair had gone completely white, and deep lines etched his face. But his eyes remained sharp and alert. His gray work jumpsuit was stained with grease and hydraulic fluid, evidence of another day keeping the station's vital systems functioning. "Leo, you're home early." Mal's smile faded as he noticed the mark on his grandson's face. "What happened?" Leo looked down at the table. "Nothing. Just a training accident." Mal crossed the room in 3 strides and gently tilted Leo's face toward the light. His expression darkened. "That's no training accident. That's a handprint." His voice was dangerously quiet. "Who did this?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Mal released Leo's chin and pulled up a chair. "Tell me what happened." Leo hesitated. Then the whole story spilled out. His mention of Mal's past, Thrax's mockery, the slap, the humiliation. As he spoke, He watched his grandfather's expression change from concern to anger to something else entirely, a cold, calculating look that Leo had never seen before. When Leo finished, Mal sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood abruptly. "Wait here." "Grandfather, don't—" But Mal was already opening the storage compartment recessed into the wall beside his bed. He input a code into a small safe that Leo had rarely seen opened. From it, Mal withdrew a circular object about the size of his palm. The royal medallion gleamed in the artificial light, its intricate engravings and embedded crystal catching and refracting the glow of the overhead panels. "I didn't want to bring this out again," Mal said softly. "That life is behind me. But some lessons need to be taught." "What are you going to do?" Leo asked, suddenly afraid. Mal tucked the medallion into his pocket. "Something I should have done the moment that alien was hired. I checked his credentials then, and they didn't add up. But I kept quiet, told myself it wasn't my business anymore." He looked at Leo, his gaze softening. "I was wrong. When someone hurts my family, it becomes my business. He's the head combat instructor. He'll what?" Mal's voice was steady. "Hit an old mechanic? Let him try." He headed for the door. "I'm going to clean up first. Then we're going back to that combat deck." Leo felt a mixture of dread and anticipation swirling in his stomach. "I'll come with you." Mal nodded. "Yes, you will. It's time you learned that some truths can't be hidden forever, no matter how convenient that might be for those in power." As his grandfather disappeared into the bathroom, Leo stared at the closed door, wondering what version of Malcolm Trent would emerge. The quiet station mechanic everyone knew, or the man who had once commanded enough respect to train the Emperor's own guards. News traveled fast on a space station. By the time Leo and his grandfather reached the upper levels, the story of the incident had spread through the station's internal messaging system. The slap had been captured by the training deck's surveillance drones, and someone, Leo suspected one of the other instructors who had never warmed to Thrax, had ensured the footage made its way to the station's informal information networks. The corridors seemed unusually busy as they made their way toward the combat deck. People glanced at them with poorly disguised curiosity. A few nodded respectfully to Mal, which was unusual in itself. Normally, station mechanics were all but invisible to the general population. "Ignore them," Mal said quietly. "Focus on what matters." Leo nodded, though his heart was racing. His grandfather had emerged from the bathroom transformed. Gone was the oil-stained jumpsuit, replaced by a simple but immaculate black tunic and pants that Leo had never seen before. His white hair was combed back neatly, and he moved with a fluidity that belied his age. Most striking was his bearing, straight-backed, head held high, with a presence that seemed to command the very space around him. As they approached the combat deck, they could hear the sounds of training in progress. The afternoon session would be underway, with cadets from multiple classes rotating through various stations under the supervision of the instructors. "Wait," Leo said, suddenly hesitant. "What exactly are you planning to do?" Mal paused before the massive doors. "I'm going to have a conversation with Instructor Thrax. That's all. He won't listen. He thinks you're just a mechanic." Mal smiled slightly. "I am a mechanic. Leo, that's not an insult, but before that, I was something else. And after today, Thrax will understand exactly what that was." The doors slid open, and they stepped onto the combat deck. The vast space was alive with activity. Cadets sparring on mats, others working with holographic targeting systems, a group in the corner practicing zero-gravity maneuvers in a controlled anti-grav field. The air smelled of sweat and the ozone tang of energy weapons set to training mode. Heads turned as they entered. A ripple of whispers spread across the deck. Leo spotted his classmates from the morning session staring with wide eyes. Zara gave him a small nod of acknowledgement. Instructor Thrax was supervising a group of advanced cadets at the far end of the deck. He hadn't noticed the newcomers yet, focused as he was on critiquing a cadet's form with his customary harshness. "Your grip is weak. Do you expect to incapacitate an opponent by tickling them? Again?" Mal strode directly toward the group, his footsteps deliberate but silent on the padded flooring. Leo followed, feeling as though he were watching the scene unfold from outside his body. They were halfway across the deck when one of the assistant instructors spotted them and quickly whispered something to Thrax. The alien straightened, turning slowly to face them. His obsidian eyes narrowed as he recognized Leo, then widened slightly as he took in Mal. "This area is restricted to cadets and training personnel," Thrax announced, his deep voice carrying across the suddenly quieting deck. "Maintenance staff should use the service request system if repairs are needed." Mal continued forward until he stood just outside the training circle. "I'm not here for repairs. Instructor Thrax. I'm here about my grandson." Thrax's expression remained impassive. "Cadet disciplinary matters are handled through official channels. If you have a complaint, take it to the administrative office. I prefer a more direct approach." Mal's voice was calm, but carried a steel edge that Leo had never heard before. "You struck my grandson today." The entire combat deck had gone silent now. Cadets and instructors alike had stopped their activities to watch the confrontation. Leo could feel dozens of eyes on them. Thrax's mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. "I corrected an insubordinate cadet who was spreading fabrications and undermining authority. Standard disciplinary procedure." "Physical assault is not standard procedure at this academy or any legitimate training facility in the Federation." Mal took another step forward. "But then, you wouldn't know that, would you? Given that your own training credentials are questionable." A dangerous gleam appeared in Thrax's eyes. "You overstep, mechanic. I've been a combat instructor for 20 years. My reputation is beyond reproach." "Is it?" Mal reached into his pocket and withdrew the medallion, holding it up so that its crystal caught the light. "I thought I recognized your name when you first arrived at this station. It took me a while to place it. You failed the Royal Guard training program 15 years ago, washed out in the second phase, and yet here you are, claiming combat expertise you never earned." A collective gasp went through the watching crowd. Thrax's green skin darkened with what Leo assumed was his species' equivalent of a flush. "Lies!" Thrax hissed. "You know nothing." "I know everything about the program," Mal replied evenly. "I designed it. I implemented it. I evaluated every candidate who came through it for over a decade, including you. Thrax of the Khan Collective, your file crossed my desk. Your performance was memorable in its inadequacy." Thrax took a menacing step forward, his massive frame towering over Mal. "You claim to be Malcolm Trent, the legendary Guardmaster?" He let out a harsh laugh. "That man would be old and feeble by now, not fixing waste recyclers on a backwater station. Age brings wisdom, not weakness," Mal said. "And retirement was my choice, as was keeping my past to myself." He glanced at Leo. "But some things are worth breaking silence for." The tension in the air was palpable. Leo could see the conflict playing out on Thrax's face, disbelief battling with uncertainty. "Prove it," Thrax finally said. "If you truly are who you claim to be, prove it here and now." Mal raised an eyebrow. "You're challenging me to combat? Unless you're afraid your ancient bones can't handle it." Thrax's confidence seemed to be returning. "1 round. No weapons. Training circle rules." A murmur ran through the watching crowd. Leo stepped forward. "Grandfather, you don't have to." Mal placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. "It's all right." He turned back to Thrax. "I accept your challenge, but with one condition. When I win, you publicly acknowledge your lies and resign your position." Thrax's mouth stretched into a predatory grin. "And when I win, you and your grandson will leave this station on the next transport. Agreed?" Mal nodded once. Agreed. The news of the challenge spread like wildfire. Within minutes, the combat deck was packed with spectators, off-duty cadets, curious station personnel, even a few officers who had heard rumors of the confrontation. They formed a ring around the central training circle where Mal and Thrax faced each other. Thrax had removed his instructor's jacket, revealing a torso covered in the same leathery green skin as his face, crisscrossed with scars from countless battles. He rolled his massive shoulders and stretched his neck, making a show of his physical prowess for the audience. Mal stood quietly, making no such display. He had removed his tunic, wearing only a simple black sleeveless shirt that revealed arms corded with lean muscle, not the bulging mass of Thrax, but the defined strength of someone who had spent decades in physical labor. Leo watched from the front of the crowd, his heart pounding in his chest. Part of him wanted to stop this madness before his grandfather got hurt. But another part, a growing part, wanted to see Thrax finally face consequences. Captain Alara, the station's security chief, pushed through the crowd to stand at the edge of the training circle. A tall woman with close-cropped silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. She surveyed the scene with obvious disapproval. "This is highly irregular," she announced. "Unsanctioned combat between station personnel is prohibited." "This is a training demonstration, Captain," Thrax said smoothly. "For educational purposes, isn't that right? Guard Master." The title dripped with sarcasm. Mal simply nodded. Indeed, a valuable lesson for all present. Captain Alara looked between them, clearly unconvinced but unwilling to disrupt what had become a station-wide spectacle. "Very well. 1 round only. Standard training circle rules apply. First to yield or be rendered combat ineffective loses." She stepped back. "Begin when ready." Thrax immediately adopted a combat stance, his enormous hands raised before him, feet spread wide in the distinctive style of Carnian martial arts. "Last chance to walk away, old man," he growled. Mal remained standing normally, hands at his sides. "Whenever you're ready." The alien instructor launched forward with surprising speed for his size, a green blur aiming a devastating strike at Mal's head. The crowd gasped and then gaped in astonishment as Mal simply wasn't there anymore. He had shifted slightly to the side, the minimum movement necessary to avoid the blow. Thrax snarled and pivoted, unleashing a barrage of strikes that would have incapacitated any normal opponent. But Mal moved with fluid precision, each step and gesture economical, wasting no energy as he evaded the assault. He wasn't just dodging. He was analyzing, reading Thrax's patterns and rhythms. "Fight back," Thrax roared in frustration after nearly 30 seconds of failed attacks. "As you wish," Mal replied calmly. What happened next occurred so quickly that many observers would later disagree on the exact sequence. Mal seemed to glide forward into Thrax's guard. His hands moved in a precise pattern, striking several points on the alien's torso and limbs. Then he pivoted, using Thrax's own momentum against him, and suddenly the massive instructor was airborne, crashing onto his back with an impact that shook the training circle. Before Thrax could recover, Mal had him in a complex joint lock, one knee pressing into a specific point on the alien's chest. Thrax struggled for a moment, then let out a howl of pain as Mal applied the slightest additional pressure. "Yield," Mal said quietly. "Never," Thrax gasped, still struggling. Mal reached into his pocket with his free hand and withdrew the medallion, holding it where Thrax could clearly see it. "Look closely. Recognize the Imperial seal, the authentication crystal, the serial number? Only 63 of these were ever issued, all to guardmasters who served the Emperor directly." His voice remained calm, conversational even, as he maintained the debilitating hold. "You studied our techniques, you memorized our forms, but you never understood the philosophy behind them. Thrax's struggles weakened as he stared at the medallion. Doubt crept into his expression. The Royal Guard was never about physical dominance. Mal continued. It was about precision, control, using the minimum force necessary to achieve the desired outcome. He adjusted his grip slightly, causing Thrax to inhale sharply. I could have ended this encounter in the first 2 seconds. I extended it to make a point. The combat deck was absolutely silent. Every eye was fixed on the scene, every ear straining to catch Mal's words. Now, Mal said, his voice hardening slightly. You will yield, and then you will tell these cadets the truth about your qualifications. For a long moment, the only sound was Thrax's labored breathing. Then, finally, I yield. Mal released him immediately and stood, stepping back as Thrax slowly, painfully got to his feet. The alien instructor's arrogance had vanished, replaced by a mixture of humiliation and something that might have been respect. Your name? Mal prompted. Thrax straightened as much as his injured body would allow. I am Thrax, formerly of the Khan Collective. And your actual qualifications? A long pause. Then, I completed basic combat training with the Kharnian Defense Force. I applied to the Royal Guard training program, but was rejected during the evaluation phase. His obsidian eyes dropped. I never received formal instructor certification. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. Leo stared in disbelief, even though he had never truly doubted his grandfather. How did you obtain your position here? Captain Alara stepped forward, her expression thunderous. Thrax's shoulders slumped. I acquired documentation from a former colleague who had completed partial certification. I modified it to include my name. You falsified Federation credentials? The captain's voice was ice. That's a serious offense. The cadets here were receiving substandard training, Mal interjected, which explains the declining performance metrics over the past 2 years. But there's more. He turned to Thrax. Tell them about the special fees. Thrax's head snapped up. Genuine fear in his eyes now. I don't. The additional training fees you've been charging certain cadets, Mal pressed. The ones who couldn't meet your artificially high standards without extra help. Where did that money go? The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the crowd, a cadet stepped forward, a nervous-looking Venusian with scaled skin. It's true, the cadet said hesitantly. Those of us who couldn't pass his evaluations. He offered private sessions, for a price. Others began to nod, a few more stepping forward with similar accounts. Captain Alara's expression grew darker with each testimony. Security to the combat deck, she spoke into a communicator. Instructor Thrax is relieved of duty pending investigation. He is to be escorted to the brig immediately. As security officers entered and moved toward Thrax, the alien seemed to shrink in on himself. The intimidating presence that had terrorized cadets for 2 years was gone, replaced by a defeated figure facing the consequences of his deception. Before the officers reached him, Thrax looked at Mal one last time. You could have exposed me at any time. Why wait until now? Mal glanced at Leo, then back to Thrax. I mind my own business, until someone makes it my business by harming my family. As Thrax was led away, the crowd erupted in conversation. Captain Alara began issuing orders, officially closing the combat deck pending a full investigation. Instructors hurried to dismiss their stunned cadets, who departed in excited clusters, already spreading the story throughout the station. In the midst of the chaos, Leo approached his grandfather, who was calmly retrieving his tunic. That was, Leo struggled to find the words. I've never seen anything like it. Mal smiled slightly. Combat is just applied physics and psychology. Leo, nothing mysterious about it. But you took him down so easily, and he's bigger, stronger. None of that matters when you understand the principles. Mal pulled his tunic back on. It's not about force against force. It's about balance, leverage, and timing. Leo shook his head in wonder. All this time, I thought your stories were just stories. But you really did train the Emperor's guard. I did. Mal's expression grew serious. But that life is behind me. I chose this one. Fixing machines, helping keep this station running, raising you. And I don't regret that choice for a moment. Before Leo could respond, Captain Alara approached them. Malcolm Trent, she said, her tone formal but respectful. I believe we need to have a conversation about what just happened here. Mal nodded. Of course, Captain, but first, I need to show my grandson something. With your permission. She hesitated, then nodded. My office. 1 hour. She strode away, already coordinating with her security team via communicator. Come on, Mal said to Leo. We have somewhere to be. To Leo's surprise, his grandfather led him not back to their quarters, but to a section of the station he rarely visited, the agricultural level, where hydroponics gardens provided fresh produce for the station's inhabitants. The space was a stark contrast to the sterile corridors and functional training areas of the upper levels. Here, artificial lighting mimicked the spectrum of a yellow dwarf star, bathing the vast chamber in golden light. The air was moist and rich with the scent of growing things, herbs, vegetables, and flowering plants that added color to the otherwise monochromatic station. Mal navigated the paths between growing beds with familiar ease, nodding to the agricultural technicians they passed. Eventually, they reached a small, secluded corner where a section of the garden seemed less organized than the rest, a wild patch of mixed plants growing together in what appeared to be a deliberate chaos. This is my garden, Mal explained, seeing Leo's confusion. Station management allocated personal growing spaces to long-term personnel years ago. Most people grow supplemental vegetables or medicinal herbs. I grow memories. Leo looked more closely at the plants. Many were unfamiliar to him, species from distant worlds with strange-colored leaves and unusual structures. These aren't from Earth. No, these are plants I encountered during my service with the Guard. Each mission, each world. I tried to bring something back, a living reminder. Mal knelt beside a plant with silver-blue foliage and gently touched one of its leaves. This one is from Altair Prime, where I protected the Emperor during peace negotiations that ended the border conflicts. And this, he pointed to a strange, spiral-shaped growth, is from the methane swamps of Deneb 4, where we rescued a diplomatic convoy. Leo crouched beside his grandfather, seeing the garden with new eyes. You've never brought me here before. Some memories are private. Some stories aren't meant to be shared until the right time. Mal reached into a small stone container, half hidden among the plants, and withdrew a cloth-wrapped bundle. But today has made me realize that perhaps I've kept too many secrets. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small metal box. From it, he removed a data crystal, the old type, rarely used now except for archival storage. This contains my official service record, the unredacted version. I've never shown it to anyone since I left the service. Leo stared at the crystal, understanding the significance of the gesture. Why now? Because you deserve to know the truth about your heritage. Not so you can boast about it, that was never the point, but so you understand the responsibility it carries. Mal placed the crystal in Leo's palm. The Royal Guard wasn't just about combat prowess. It was about integrity, judgment, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Leo curled his fingers around the crystal, feeling its weight, physical and symbolic. Like you did today. Mal nodded. What Thrax was doing wasn't just fraud. He was abusing his position, exploiting vulnerable cadets, undermining the very principles the Academy was founded on. Someone needed to stop him. He gestured to the garden around them. Life is like this garden, Leo. Sometimes you need to let the wild plants grow alongside the cultivated ones, but you also need to recognize the truly invasive species, the ones that will choke everything else if left unchecked. They sat in silence for a moment, surrounded by the living collection of Mal's extraordinary past. The gentle hum of the hydroponic systems provided a soothing backdrop to their thoughts. "What happens now?" Leo finally asked. "With the academy. With Thrax gone, There will be an investigation, probably a review of all training programs and personnel." Mal stood, brushing soil from his knees. "The Combat Federation takes credential fraud very seriously. They'll likely send a monitoring team. And the cadets, our training?" "That's a good question." Mal looked thoughtful. "The station can't afford to halt combat training completely. Too many careers depend on it. But until new instructors are vetted..." He trailed off, then smiled slightly. "Perhaps some informal sessions could be arranged. Nothing official, of course." Leo's eyes widened as he realized what his grandfather was suggesting. "You mean you would..." "I'm just a station mechanic," Mal said with a wink. "But I might have a few techniques I could share. Basic principles only. Mind you, nothing that would require official certification." "Where?" "The combat deck is closed." Mal gestured to the open space near his garden. "Sometimes the best training happens in unexpected places. The first Royal Guard trained in palace gardens, not combat arenas. There's a certain advantage to learning among living things. It reminds us what we're fighting to protect." The idea was audacious, but Leo felt a surge of excitement. "Do you think anyone would come?" "I suspect word has already spread about today's events. If we were to be here tomorrow, say, after my shift ends..." Mal shrugged. "Who knows who might drop by?" Leo grinned, feeling a new sense of purpose blossoming inside him. For the first time since the incident with Thrax, the humiliation and doubt were completely gone, replaced by something stronger. Pride. Yes, but also a deeper understanding of his grandfather and the legacy he carried. "I should go see Captain Alara," Mal said, checking the time on his wrist display. "You head back to quarters. Review that data crystal if you want. It's yours now." As his grandfather turned to leave, Leo called after him. "Grandfather, thank you. Not just for today, but for everything." Mal smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his weathered face. "That's what family does. Leo, we stand up for each other. Never forget that." As predicted, word spread quickly through the station's cadet community. The following evening, when Leo and his grandfather arrived at the garden after Mal's shift, they found nearly 20 cadets already waiting. Some were from Leo's class, including Zara and, surprisingly, Kel. Others were cadets he recognized only in passing. All looked both nervous and excited. "I didn't expect quite so many," Mal murmured as they approached. Leo nodded. "News travels fast, especially good news." The cadets straightened to attention as Mal walked into the open space between garden beds. He surveyed the group thoughtfully. "At ease," he said finally. "This isn't an official training session. I'm not your instructor. I'm just an old man who knows a few things that might be useful." A cadet near the front, a slender Martian with the characteristic rust-red hair of the original colonists, raised her hand hesitantly. "Is it true you were guardmaster to the Emperor?" Mal sighed. "Yes, though that title is long retired. But we're not here to talk about my past. We're here to focus on your future." He moved to the center of the space. "Form a circle, please. Enough room to extend your arms without touching your neighbors." The cadets quickly complied, arranging themselves around the edges of the clearing. Leo took a position among them, determined to experience this training as just another student. "Combat," Mal began, "is the last resort of the truly skilled. Anyone can throw a punch. Few know when not to." He stood perfectly still in the center of the circle, his posture relaxed, yet somehow commanding. The first principle of the Royal Guard training was balance, not just physical, but mental and moral. You must know where you stand before you can move effectively in any direction. For the next hour, Mal guided them through basic stance work, nothing flashy, just the fundamental positions that form the foundation of all combat techniques. He corrected their posture with gentle adjustments, explaining the biomechanics behind each position with the precision of someone who understood not just how the techniques worked, but why. Leo had seen some of these stances before in his grandfather's occasional private lessons, but never with such detailed explanation. The other cadets, accustomed to Thrax's aggressive, results-oriented approach, seemed initially confused by the methodical pace. By the end of the hour, however, a new understanding had begun to dawn on their faces. "That's enough for today," Mal announced as the station's lighting began to shift to evening mode. "Practice these positions. Understand them. Your body must know them so completely that they become your natural way of standing." "When is the next session?" called a cadet from the back. Mal considered for a moment. "Same time tomorrow, if you wish to return." "Will we learn actual combat moves?" asked Kell, sounding both skeptical and hopeful. "You already have," Mal replied with a small smile. "Everything begins with how you stand. The rest is just application of principles." He bowed slightly to the group. "Until tomorrow." Then, as the cadets dispersed, many thanking Mal as they left, Leo noticed Captain Alara standing at the entrance to the garden section. She had been watching, he realized. Probably for some time. His grandfather had noticed too, and was now walking toward her. Leo followed, close enough to hear their conversation, but hanging back slightly out of respect. "Unofficial training in the hydroponics bay," Captain Alara observed, her tone neutral. "Creative." Mal shrugged. "Just sharing some basic knowledge with interested young people. Nothing that requires certification." The captain's lips twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. "I've received word from the Combat Federation. They're sending an investigative team to review the entire incident with Thrax. They'll arrive within the week." "I expected as much. They'll want to interview you extensively." Mal nodded. "Of course." Captain Alara looked past him to the now empty training space. "These unofficial sessions of yours, the Federation team might be interested in observing them. They're welcome to watch some old man gardening and talking to cadets about proper posture," Mal said mildly. The captain actually smiled this time. "Malcolm Trent, you're as diplomatic as your record suggests." She turned to leave, then paused. "The investigation team is headed by Admiral Chen. She specifically requested this assignment when she heard your name mentioned in the incident report." Mal's expression changed subtly, a flicker of recognition, perhaps even concern. "Li Wei Chen." "The same. I believe you know each other?" "We served together. A long time ago." Mal's voice was carefully neutral. Captain Alara nodded. "Well, it seems this station is about to become very interesting. I'll leave you to your gardening, Guard Master." With a respectful nod, she departed. Leo approached his grandfather, who seemed lost in thought. "Who is Admiral Chen?" Mal blinked, returning to the present. "Someone from my past. She was a colleague and a friend. Once." He shook his head slightly. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "The kind of complicated that belongs to that past life." Mal put his arm around Leo's shoulders. "Come on, we've got regular maintenance shifts tomorrow, and now apparently additional gardening duties to attend to afterward." As they walked back toward their quarters, Leo couldn't help but wonder about this new development. His grandfather had been willing to reveal his past to protect Leo, but there were clearly still layers to that past that remained shrouded in mystery. Who was Admiral Chen? What history did she share with his grandfather? And what would her arrival mean for their future on Nexus 12? The informal training sessions continued each evening, growing in both attendance and complexity. By the third day, nearly 50 cadets crowded the hydroponics bay, spilling over into adjacent garden sections. Station personnel from other departments began to appear as well, standing at the periphery to watch the legendary Guard Master in action. Mal remained focused on fundamentals, proper breathing, efficient movement, understanding one's center of gravity. He rarely demonstrated actual combat techniques, instead guiding cadets to discover the principles that would allow them to develop their own effective styles. Combat isn't about memorizing sequences, he explained during the fourth session. It's about understanding principles and applying them creatively to each unique situation. No two encounters are ever identical. Leo absorbed the lessons eagerly, often staying after the others had left to practice under his grandfather's watchful eye. He was beginning to understand why Mal had never pushed his training in the official academy. These teachings went far beyond the standardized combat curriculum, incorporating elements of philosophy, physics, and even art. On the fifth day, as cadets paired off to practice a basic defensive principle, Leo found himself partnered with Kel. The larger cadet had been among the most skeptical initially, but had returned faithfully to each session, gradually shedding his arrogance as he struggled with concepts that challenged his reliance on brute strength. "Your grandfather is not what I expected," Kel admitted as they worked through the exercise. "I thought the Royal Guard was all about flashy techniques and secret killing moves." Leo smiled. "I think that's what most people expect, but it's really about efficiency," Kel finished. "Using the minimum necessary force. Yeah, I'm starting to get it." He attempted the movement Mal had demonstrated, frowning in concentration. "Still feels weird, though, like I'm not doing enough." "That's because you're used to overpowering opponents," Leo said, remembering his grandfather's explanation. "Try to feel the energy flow instead of forcing it." Kel nodded and tried again. This time, when Leo extended his arm in a simulated strike, Kel redirected it smoothly, using Leo's own momentum to guide him past without direct opposition. Kel's face lit up with surprised delight. "I did it." "Well done," came Mal's voice from behind them. He had been circulating among the pairs, offering quiet corrections. "You're beginning to understand." Kel straightened, a hint of his old confidence returning, but tempered now with genuine respect. "Thank you, sir. I want to apologize for not believing Leo before. About you, I mean." Mal waved away the apology. "Belief should be earned, not demanded. Actions speak louder than claims." He looked between them with approval. "You two work well together. Different physical types, different natural approaches to combat, perfect complementary training partners." As Mal moved on to the next pair, Kel gave Leo a somewhat sheepish grin. "Friends, then, despite me being an arrogant jerk before?" Leo returned the smile, extending his hand. "Friends." Their moment was interrupted by a stir at the entrance to the garden. Heads turned as Captain Alara entered, accompanied by 3 people in the distinctive midnight blue uniforms of the Combat Federation. At their center walked a woman whose bearing commanded attention despite her small stature, barely taller than Leo himself. Her black hair was streaked with silver and pulled back in a severe bun, and the Admiral's insignia gleamed on her collar. Admiral Chen had arrived. The informal training session ground to a halt as the officials made their way through the garden. Cadets straightened instinctively, some looking nervous at the presence of such high-ranking Federation personnel. Mal stepped forward to meet them, his expression carefully neutral. "Captain Alara, Admiral Chen, welcome to our garden." Admiral Chen's stern expression softened slightly as her eyes met Mal's. "Malcolm Trent, it's been a long time." 17 years? 3 months, Mal replied, "give or take a few days." A hint of a smile touched the Admiral's lips. Always precise. Some things never change. She surveyed the gathered cadets. When I heard reports of unofficial training sessions led by a retired guardmaster, I had to see for myself. Her gaze found Leo. And this must be your grandson. Leo felt himself being assessed by eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He straightened automatically, inclining his head in respect. Yes, Admiral. He has your bearing, she said to Mal. And your restraint, I hear. Most cadets would have attempted to retaliate against Thrax themselves. Leo understands that patience is sometimes the better part of valor, Mal said, a note of pride in his voice. Admiral Chen nodded thoughtfully, then addressed the gathered cadets. As you may have heard, I'm here to investigate the situation with your former instructor. But I'm also authorized to evaluate alternative training arrangements until permanent replacements can be assigned. She gestured to the two officers flanking her. Commander Dr. Farzan is our medical expert, and Lieutenant Commander Davis is our combat assessment specialist. They'll be observing and documenting these sessions. A ripple of murmurs passed through the cadets. This was more official recognition than anyone had expected. We're not an official training program, Mal pointed out. Just some interested parties sharing knowledge. Indeed. Admiral Chen's expression was unreadable, and yet I count 47 cadets and 15 station personnel in attendance. Quite an audience for an unofficial gathering. She turned to Captain Alara. The hydroponics bay seems an unusual venue for combat training. Space is at a premium on a station this size, Admiral, the captain replied smoothly. With the combat deck closed for investigation, adaptations were necessary. Admiral Chen surveyed the makeshift training area once more. Well, don't let us interrupt. Please, continue with your gardening. Mal hesitated for a moment, then nodded. As you wish. He turned back to the cadets. Let's resume. Pair exercises. Focus on redirecting force rather than opposing it directly. The session continued under the watchful eyes of the Federation officials. Leo found it difficult to concentrate, acutely aware of Admiral Chen's gaze occasionally resting on him. What was her connection to his grandfather? There was clearly history between them, a tension that went beyond professional acquaintance. When the session finally ended, Admiral Chen approached Mal again, this time with a more formal manner. Guardmaster Trent, I'd like to schedule a full debriefing regarding the Thrax incident and these training sessions tomorrow morning, 0900 hours, in Captain Alara's office. I'll be there, Mal agreed, though I'm just a station mechanic now. Admiral, the title is no longer mine. Once a guardmaster, always a guardmaster, she replied. The Emperor himself decreed that, you know, it doesn't expire with retirement. Something unspoken passed between them, a shared memory or reference that Leo couldn't decipher. Then Admiral Chen nodded to both of them and departed with her team, leaving the garden in a buzz of excited conversation. That went better than expected, Leo said quietly to his grandfather. Mal's expression was thoughtful. Perhaps. Li Wei Chen never shows her full hand immediately. There's more to come. You don't seem happy about her being here. It's complicated, Mal said again. We served together for many years. She is brilliant, dedicated, one of the finest officers I've ever known. He paused. We also disagreed fundamentally about certain aspects of the Guard's purpose and methods. That disagreement is partly why I retired. Leo absorbed this new piece of the puzzle. And now she's here, evaluating your teaching. Life has a strange sense of humor. Mal managed a small smile. Come on. It's been a long day, and tomorrow will be longer still. The following morning, Leo reported to his regular classes while Mal attended the meeting with Admiral Chen. The day dragged interminably as Leo wondered what was being discussed. Would the Admiral shut down their informal training? Would there be consequences for operating outside official channels? When his final class ended, Leo headed straight for their quarters, hoping to find his grandfather. The door slid open at his palm scan, revealing Mal seated at their small table, studying a data pad with intense concentration. "How did it go?" Leo asked anxiously. Mal looked up, his expression unreadable. "It was informative. Admiral Chen is thorough, as always." "Are we in trouble? The training sessions?" "No, quite the opposite." Mal pushed the datapad across the table. "She's offering to formally recognize what we've been doing." Leo picked up the pad and scanned the document displayed on its screen. It was an official Combat Federation proposal, outlining the establishment of an auxiliary training program to be conducted on Nexus 12 under the supervision of Guard Master Malcolm Trent, retired. "They want you to become an official instructor." "Consultant," Mal corrected. "Overseeing a new specialized training track focusing on the core principles of the Royal Guard program, adapted for standard cadet instruction." Leo could hardly believe it. "That's amazing. This means you'd be teaching officially, with Federation backing and—" He stopped, noticing his grandfather's lack of enthusiasm. "You don't want to do it?" Mal sighed. "It's not that simple. The Admiral has additional stipulations that aren't in the formal proposal." "What kind of stipulations?" "She wants to revive certain elements of the Guard training that I specifically chose not to include in our sessions. Techniques that, while effective, I consider problematic." Leo set down the pad. "What does that mean exactly?" Mal was silent for a long moment, clearly weighing how much to explain. The Royal Guard's primary purpose was protection of the Emperor, of key personnel, of critical assets. But there were secondary functions that some emperors emphasized more than others. Interrogation, information extraction, specialized combat techniques designed not just to incapacitate, but to inflict maximum damage. His voice grew quieter. "I developed many of these techniques myself in my younger days, before I understood the full implications of how they might be used." "And Admiral Chen wants you to teach these?" "To select candidates. Yes. She believes the Federation faces threats that justify such measures." Leo struggled to reconcile this information with the grandfather he knew, the man who emphasized minimum force and moral balance. "What did you tell her?" "That I needed time to consider the proposal." Mal stood and moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. 17 years ago, I walked away from the Guard, rather than continue teaching methods I had come to believe were fundamentally wrong. I'm not eager to reverse that decision now." "Then don't," Leo said simply. "We can continue as we have been. Unofficial training in the garden." Mal turned back with a sad smile. "Admiral Chen made it clear that's no longer an option. Either I accept the official position, with all its conditions, or all unauthorized combat instruction on this station will be prohibited." "She can't do that." "She can. The Combat Federation has jurisdiction over all martial training in Federation space." Mal returned to the table. "It's an elegant trap. Either I compromise my principles, or the cadets who have come to rely on our sessions lose access to any alternative training until official replacements arrive, which could be months." Leo felt a surge of indignation. "That's not fair. You're helping these cadets. Everyone can see the progress they're making." Li Wei never viewed fairness as a relevant concern when security is at stake. Mal tapped the datapad. "I have until tomorrow morning to give her my answer." They sat in silence for a time, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, Leo spoke. "What would happen if you accepted, but then just didn't teach the techniques she wants? Once you're officially appointed, could she really force you to include specific content?" Mal looked at his grandson with newfound interest. "That's a creative approach to the problem. Not entirely honest, perhaps, but—" He considered the idea. "She would certainly monitor the program closely, but you're right that there would be some flexibility in implementation. You could emphasize the defensive aspects so much that there's never time to get to the other stuff, Leo suggested, warming to the strategy. Or modify the techniques to make them less, whatever she's looking for. A slow smile spread across Mal's face. You know, you might have the makings of a strategist. Leo, looking for the third option when presented with an impossible binary choice. He picked up the data pad again. It bears consideration, but there's still risk involved. Less risk than letting Admiral Chen put someone else in charge, Leo pointed out. Someone who might actually want to teach those techniques. Mal nodded slowly. A valid point. He stood, decision apparently made. I need to meditate on this. And there's someone else I should consult. Who? Your grandmother. Mal touched a small holographic projector on his wrist. A tiny image appeared, a woman with laughing eyes and Leo's same sandy hair. She always had better judgment than I did in these matters. Leo knew his grandmother had died before he was born, but Mal occasionally spoke to her holographic image as if seeking counsel. It was a private ritual Leo had witnessed only a few times. I'll give you some space, Leo said, standing. I think I'll go check on the garden. Mal nodded gratefully. Thank you, Leo, for everything. The hydroponics bay was quiet when Leo arrived. The evening shift of agricultural technicians worked silently among the growing beds, but the area where they had been conducting training was empty. Leo made his way to his grandfather's personal garden plot, seeking the solace of that small patch of interstellar flora. To his surprise, he found Admiral Chen already there, examining one of the alien plants with evident interest. She looked up as he approached. Cadet Trent, she acknowledged. Or do you prefer Leo? Leo is fine. Admiral. He hesitated, unsure of the protocol for casual conversation with someone of her rank. Are you interested in xenobotany? I recognize this specimen, she replied, gesturing to the silver-blue plant. Altarian frost fern. Extremely rare now, the last wild specimens were destroyed when their native environment collapsed. She straightened. Your grandfather saved this one during the Altarian peace negotiations. I was there. Leo moved closer, intrigued by this glimpse into his grandfather's past. He told me a little about that mission. You served with him for a long time. 15 years. I was his second in command for 10 of those. She studied Leo with those penetrating eyes. He was the finest guardmaster in the history of the program. Innovative, principled, effective. A shadow crossed her face. Until he decided some of his own methods were too dangerous to be taught. Maybe he was right. Leo ventured cautiously. Admiral Chen's expression hardened slightly. The galaxy is not a kind place, young man. The threats the Federation faces today are more insidious than ever. Sometimes hard choices must be made for the greater good. My grandfather says that when we compromise our principles for security, we often end up with neither. A flicker of something, respect, perhaps, showed in the Admiral's eyes. He would say that. It's what we argued about for years before he finally left. She touched one of the plant's delicate fronds. Malcolm believes in absolute moral principles. I believe in practical necessities. Neither of us ever managed to convince the other. Leo considered his next words carefully. Is that why you're forcing him to choose between teaching techniques he believes are wrong and abandoning the cadets altogether? Admiral Chen raised an eyebrow. He told you about our discussion. Yes. Then you know the position of the Combat Federation. I know your position, Leo corrected, surprising himself with his boldness. But I'm not sure it represents what's best for the cadets or the Federation. Instead of being offended, Admiral Chen seemed almost amused. You have his directness as well as his bearing. She gestured around the garden. Do you know why he keeps these plants? These remnants from distant worlds? Leo shook his head. Your grandfather believes in preserving what is good and beautiful. even when it seems impractical or unnecessary. These plants serve no utilitarian purpose. They don't produce food or medicine. They simply exist, and he protects them. She fixed Leo with a meaningful look. But he also understands that gardens require boundaries, walls, protection from those who would destroy them without a second thought. Protection doesn't have to mean becoming what you're fighting against, Leo said quietly. Admiral Chen studied him for a long moment. You're very young to be so certain of such things. She straightened her uniform jacket. I've known your grandfather for most of my adult life. Leo, I respect him enormously, even when I disagree with him. I hope he makes the right choice tomorrow. With that enigmatic statement, she nodded farewell and departed, leaving Leo alone among the interstellar plants. He stood there for some time, trying to understand the complex history between these two formidable individuals and what it might mean for their future on Nexus 12. When Leo finally returned to their quarters, he found his grandfather sitting calmly at the table, the data pad before him. I've made my decision, Mal said without preamble. And I'm going to accept Admiral Chen's offer, with conditions of my own. There was a quiet determination in his voice that Leo recognized, the same tone he had used when confronting Thrax. I'll oversee the program, but I will not personally teach or demonstrate the techniques she once included. If she insists they be part of the curriculum, she'll need to find another instructor for those specific modules. Leo sat down across from him. Do you think she'll agree to that? I don't know, but it's the only compromise I can offer in good conscience. Mal pushed the data pad aside. I encountered Admiral Chen in the corridor earlier. She mentioned meeting you in the garden. She was looking at your plants, the Altarian frost fern. Mal nodded. Li Wei has always appreciated beauty, even as she pursues what she considers necessary harshness. It's what makes her complex rather than simply ruthless. He leaned forward. What did you talk about? Leo recounted their conversation, including the Admiral's cryptic final comment. When he finished, Mal looked thoughtful. She's testing us both, he said finally. Measuring our resolve. What happens if she rejects your conditions? Then we find another way. Mal's expression was serene. There are always alternatives, Leo. Sometimes they're just not immediately visible. The next morning, they reported together to Captain Alara's office. Admiral Chen was waiting, along with her 2 officers and the captain herself. The Admiral's expression gave nothing away as Mal presented his conditions, a detailed addendum to the original proposal that carefully delineated his role and responsibilities. When he finished, Admiral Chen studied the document in silence for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up. Your conditions are unorthodox, Guardmaster Trent. As is this entire situation, Mal replied evenly. Another long pause. Then, the Combat Federation accepts your terms, with one modification. She tapped her own data pad. We will require periodic assessment of all cadets in the program to ensure they are receiving comprehensive training. Those assessments will be conducted by Federation personnel, not by you. Mal considered this acceptable, provided the assessments focus on defensive capabilities and the ethical application of techniques rather than offensive potential. Admiral Chen's lips twitched. Still negotiating to the last detail. Very well. She made a notation on her pad. Assessments will include both defensive and offensive capabilities, but promotion within the program will prioritize the former. She looked up. Agreed? Mal glanced at Leo, then back to the Admiral. Agreed. Excellent. Admiral Chen stood. The Combat Federation hereby establishes the Nexus Auxiliary Training Program under the primary supervision of Guardmaster Malcolm Trent. She extended her hand. Congratulations. Mal, you're back in service. As they shook hands, Leo could sense the complex emotions beneath the formal exchange: respect, Disagreement, perhaps even a touch of fondness between these old colleagues who had chosen different paths but found themselves reluctantly reunited by circumstance. Captain Alara cleared her throat. With the formalities concluded, I believe we should discuss practical matters: location, scheduling, required resources. The meeting continued for another hour, working through the logistics of establishing an official training program outside the still-closed combat deck. To Leo's surprise, Admiral Chen suggested maintaining the hydroponics bay as their primary venue. The environment has proven effective, she noted, and there's a certain symbolic value to training amid growing things. When they finally emerged from the captain's office, Leo felt drained but optimistic. His grandfather would be able to continue teaching on largely his own terms. The cadets would receive proper training, and perhaps most importantly, the principles that Mal believed in would be preserved and passed on to a new generation. What happens now? Leo asked as they walked through the corridors. Now, Mal said with a small smile, we build something new, something that honors the best traditions of the past while adapting to the needs of the present. He placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. And you, my boy, are going to help me do it. Me? But I'm just a cadet. You're more than that. You're my grandson, my legacy. Mal's eyes were bright with purpose, and from what I've seen these past days, you have the potential to become something neither Admiral Chen nor I ever managed to be, a warrior who truly understands balance in all its forms. Leo felt a weight settling on his shoulders. Not a burden, but a mantle. A responsibility to carry forward what his grandfather had built and to find his own path within that tradition. As they reached the junction where their paths would diverge, Leo to his afternoon classes, Mal to his mechanical duties, his grandfather handed him the royal medallion. Keep this with you, Mal said, not to show off, but to remind yourself of what it represents: duty, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Leo accepted the medallion, feeling its weight in his palm, physical and symbolic. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Mal smiled. Now go. Your combat theory class starts in 10 minutes. And remember, sometimes the best way to win a fight is to transform it into something else entirely. As Leo hurried toward his classroom, the medallion secure in his pocket, he reflected on how much had changed in just a few days. What had begun with a slap, a moment of humiliation and doubt, had transformed into something powerful and unexpected. The revelation of his grandfather's true past, the fall of a corrupt instructor, and the birth of a new training program that might change the academy itself. And through it all, the most important lesson had nothing to do with combat techniques or physical prowess. It was about standing up for truth, for family, for what was right, even when doing so meant confronting those more powerful than yourself. In the garden that evening, cadets gathered once again, now as official participants in the Nexus Auxiliary training program, as his grandfather began the session with his customary words about balance and control. Leo stood a little straighter, the medallion a comforting weight against his chest. Whatever challenges lay ahead, from Admiral Chen's assessments to the whispers of those who still doubted, he knew they would face them together. Grandfather and grandson, the old guardmaster and the young cadet. United by blood and by something even stronger, shared principles that would endure long after both of them were gone. Begin, Mal announced to the assembled cadets, and as one, they moved into the first position, balanced, centered, ready for whatever might come next.